far you plan on going in. So it gives folks that if they do find your car, an idea of where to start looking for you should something happen to you out there.
Now, what's your honest feeling of all the missing in the National Forest system? I mean,
I find it rather fascinating, to be honest. I think a lot of those folks that do go missing, and they're either found alive or unfortunately deceased, and there's a lot of folks that do go missing that can be accounted for, but it's the ones that can't be accounted for that disappear without a trace that fascinates me the most. And a lot of them seem to occur in national parks, state forest land, national forest land, federal land, and they disappear, and then they send out these search teams to look for them, and they're never seen or found again. They'll find remnants like a backpack or part of their clothing, but they'll never find that person again, which I think is fascinating. There's no explanation of what happened to those people.
Yeah, I could see if it happened to a couple thousand, but from what I've been reading, like the missing 411, you're talking, like 14,000 people that went into a park over a certain period of time, National Forest System. It just totally disappeared. No trace of them.
Yeah, David Paulides is the author of this 411 missing 411 books, and he's done some really deep and intense research into the missing folks, and he's written several books on the subject. I think almost a half a dozen, if not more, and they're fascinating reads, and some of the cases are quite disturbing because they involve small children, ages 2, 3, 4 years old that just disappear without a trace. And he has no explanation for what happens to them or where they go, and I don't either. It's fascinating that something like that happens, and it's a sad situation where someone disappears and there's no closure for the family, or they're not able to rescue that person or find them. It's definitely a fascinating topic for discussion, and something, unfortunately, I'm not qualified to discuss because I don't really research that. But when I hear the cases come up, I'll look into them and read the notes on it or the findings, if there are any findings, and see if there's a conclusion to the case. But aside from that, reading the missing 411 books is about as far as into detail I've gone into these cases.
Yeah, that's pretty much with me, too. I just find it strange, that, some people try to tie it with Bigfoot, some try to tie it with aliens. I don't know what it is. I don't think we have that many serial killers in the forest system running around, offing people. I don't think that many people would, fall off a cliff or get swept down by the river, or, it's just kind of, exciting and interesting. Like, where are they going? What's happening? And that's where you get these people coming on and saying, well, gee, maybe they walked through a portal. Maybe Bigfoot got them. Who knows? It's a lot of strange topics out there about it.
Oh, sure. There sure are. And a lot of folks don't realize, and I was even surprised when I learned this many, many years ago. I've been an outdoorsman. I love to hike and camp and fish and hunt and all that. And something I learned when I was very young is that when an animal or even a person, let's say a person, passes away in the forest, Mother Nature has an amazing disposal system where the carcass, a deer, for example, a deer dies in the forest naturally. Within 7 to 10 days, that deer is almost completely decomposed, and there's very little trace, if any, left of the deer. And I'm talking bones, too, because as I found out, field mice, smaller predators like porcupines, they love to eat the bones and the marrow in the bones, and they scatter the bones quite a long distance. So any sign of that animal that died in the forest is pretty much covered up, and there's no trace of a deer. Otherwise, we'd be finding dead deer and dead bear and all kinds of carcasses when we went out there. But Mother Nature has a great disposal system where an animal or even a person would be decomposed and disposed of very, very quickly.
Oh, so they would even decompose a lot more than they would if they were, in the city or in the house or something, and pass on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's elements that they're exposed to, as well as insects and other predators, other animals that would help to dispose of the carcass pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah, I could imagine larger animals, too, dragging off, body parts and all that stuff. So, yeah, that would maybe account for why the bodies aren't being found.
It's a possibility, definitely.
still gives me thought. I'll be honest with you. I grew up in a family that used to go camping every weekend during the summer. We'd go out for a 2-3, week vacation when I was growing up every year. We traveled everywhere from Texas, Idaho, Montana, all those places, growing up. Camping, I'll tell you, after my experience, but whatever I ran into, and I can't even tell you what it really is. I can't say it's a Bigfoot. Maybe it was some hairy old man that left over from, Iraq or Vietnam War. Who knows, whatever it was. But I can honestly tell you this. I have not had the desire to go camping since then, which was really a bummer because, I have 8 children and we used to go camping ourselves every weekend during the summers. And all of a sudden, I just lost the urge of wanting to go anywhere near a forest.
Well, you're not alone. A lot of folks who've had experiences, sightings or encounters or something happened to them in the woods that they can't explain or understand have had a complete change of heart when it comes to going out in the outdoors. And then, to be honest, there have been witnesses that I've interviewed and other people have interviewed that have refused to go back into the forest or even that location for years, if not decades. Some people I've talked to, it's taken them 20 or 30 years to be able to go back to that spot where they had their sighting or encounter just because they're so traumatized by the event, and it changes their lives. It puts the fear of God in them because, let's face it, this animal is thought by millions of people not to exist. So when someone has an encounter and they actually see this creature, that's life-changing. We're taught these things aren't real. They don't exist. That there's no way that could be out there. And when you finally see one for yourself, everything you've taught, everything you've understood, everything you've known about the wildlife, outdoors, and everything literally changes at that moment. And it can change people very intensely, and that traumatic experience definitely leaves an emotional scar on people.
Oh, it really does. In my case, too, after I didn't go around and tell anybody. My friend, who was a medical doctor, we kind of lost our friendship over it because he was scared. He was, like I said, opening up his medical practice. His father was a Superior Court judge in Pierce County, Washington. His brother was a high-profile criminal attorney. And, he didn't want to be associated with the word Bigfoot, because he just opened up a medical practice, and all of a sudden, if you're in the news, all of a sudden, this guy claims he saw a Bigfoot. It's going to affect getting patients. And, it kind of put a stress on our friendship. And, I haven't even brought it up till I started, getting back into radio after retirement. And the only reason why I brought it up is I get people all the time sending me stories about Bigfoot, that Bigfoot are loving. They talk to you telepathically. They give off orbs. They're here to serve mankind. They're watching after, us humans. And, I don't know. I didn't see whatever I ran into. I was in the military, and I was never as so scared as when that thing was chasing us. I mean, I'd rather have been in a firefight again than run into what I ran into. I'll tell you, I was so traumatized from it. And I still occasionally have nightmares about it. But I didn't talk about it for years. And the only reason why I ever even brought it up on my show is because of all these people, they've never seen a Bigfoot or anything near what a Bigfoot is. So they just have their own ideas what a Bigfoot is.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have different ideas when it comes to the subject. And there are people that believe that it's a loving, warm, receptive creature that will communicate telepathically with them, and some believe it's a space alien. There's a variety of different theories and people, and they're certainly welcome to it. I don't knock anybody for their beliefs or their opinions, but it certainly doesn't sound to me like you had an encounter with a loving, caring creature that wanted to be friends and nurture you and nurture Earth. And it sounded like whatever you had an encounter with was aggressive and didn't want you in its territory. That's why it chased you off, especially if it was throwing rocks at you. And that doesn't sound like to me like something that's going to communicate telepathically and be warm and welcoming and say, hey, come on, hang out with me in the forest. It doesn't sound like to me at all that's what you had an experience with.
Well, it sure did a good job chasing us away from where we were at. But I had the strong feeling, and I've always thought this, Eric, if I would have stood my grounds there, and maybe people said, well, you got a camera, why didn't you take pictures? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. When something like that charges after you, you don't think about stopping and turn around and trying to take a picture. Maybe if you were a war correspondent, you would think about, hey, I'm going to get a picture. I'm not a normal person. You got one thing in your mind, and it's called fright and fear and survival.
Yeah, it's that whole fight or flight aspect where your body kicks into. Either you're going to stand your ground and fight and hope to God that you can defend yourself and protect yourself, or you're going to take off in fear, and that's what it sounded like. Your body chose to get out of there, which was the smartest thing to do, because without a gun or without bear spray, without a knife, without anything to protect yourself, and even if it was a bear that you saw, chances of you defending yourself successfully and coming away unscathed is very, very minimal.
Oh, yeah. People don't realize that when they go out looking for Bigfoot. When I was a kid, my dad's brother was an avid hunter. And this is, I'm now going on 68 years old. I was probably about 10 years old when this happened. But it was around Mount Shasta. He was out bear hunting. And he shot a bear. And he didn't get the kill shot. So the bear came, charged him. And I don't know if he got a second shot in, but I know that the bear mauled him so bad that he was in the hospital for well over a month. They thought he was going to die, and the rest of his life, he had scars all over his body where he was just mauled. And that's the things you have to be worried about when you go out looking for Bigfoot or just going out, hiking in the woods. You got to be prepared.
Oh, exactly, because as we discussed a little bit ago, there's so many different types of elements and things that can happen out there. You have to carry at least bear spray with you or something that you can defend yourself with, because you can come across anything or anybody. Even humans can be dangerous if you come across the wrong person with the wrong intentions. So you always have to be prepared when you're out in the forest.
Now, have you had any negative experiences out in the forest?
I've been at this for going out in the field and investigating for over 22 years now. And I've had some rather harrowing experiences where I carry bear spray with me. I learned early that you need to take that stuff with you, as I had an encounter with a black bear about 11:30 at night one night when I was by myself. And fortunately, the bear was more afraid of me than I was of it. But I've been carrying bear spray ever since. And I've had some pretty harrowing encounters where I've had rocks thrown at me and my research team. We've heard really intense, loud, aggressive vocalizations. Like you described, it echoes through the valley. And where we were at, we were on top of a mountain in the middle of Pennsylvania, and we had something scream at us. And it's very loud. You can feel it in your chest. And we've had encounters like that. I've also had encounters with coyote, black bear. I've run across a couple of rattlesnakes and not cottonmouths, but rattlesnakes. And I've come across some other aggressive dogs, not necessarily like a domesticated dog, but more like a pack of wild dogs. So you have to be careful. We've even gotten chased out of areas by people who were illegally growing marijuana. We shouldn't have been in an area where they were growing their crops, so we got chased out of there. So you have to be prepared for everything.
Well, yeah, too. That's one place where, if you go out there and somebody... And I don't think, a lot of states now are legalizing, marijuana, like Washington is one of them. But, if you're in the wrong state, the wrong area, and you go out and stumble against, somebody who's growing a lot, for example, they're going to look at, if you report them, what's going to happen to them, and then they're going to look at what's going to happen to you if they don't take care of you. So maybe that's also where some of the people maybe go missing, too.
That's a possibility, yeah. You always have to be prepared for anything and anyone when you go out in the forest, because you never know what you're going to run into.
I one time I was out in the forest, and with a friend, and we were just hiking around, and some idiot had some type of semi-automatic that was converted over to full automatic, and they were just shooting everywhere. And I'll tell you, that was an experience I never want to go through. So that's another thing you have to watch out, because there's maybe people out there, are kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I always jokingly cite the movie Deliverance. You never know what you're going to run into out there. So always best to be prepared.
Well,